Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski, campaign manager, Donald Trump for president, 2015-2016. Also, New York Times bestselling author, Let Trump Be Trump, Trump's Enemies. Buy one of them, buy them both. Buy them now, must reads, and now could be a U.S. Senator from New Hampshire. Corey Lewandowski, summer's over. Great to have you with us.
It is great to be with you. Kids are back to school for the first time, and today's a big first day for 3rd, 5th, and 7th graders.
I know. Well, I had a chance to meet your family when I was there a couple of weeks ago, and I know Allison, your wife, was looking forward to them getting back to school, is what she said. But it's always an exciting day, and they're back going to school in Wyndham, and I think your oldest daughter is in middle school, right? Wyndham Middle School?
Yeah, look, it's, John, you know this, you've been through it now. It goes quick, a lot quicker than, sometimes you think about. But, bringing the kids, I brought them all to school today. I stayed home to do that. And it's so important. And middle school, and, there's a brand new school open in our hometown, the largest elementary school in the state. And so we dropped our youngest off over there today. And, it's sad, but also exciting at the same time.
Well, it is, especially when they go up, they have their little lunch box. I remember those days. It's sad and good, but you're right, Corey. I remember when we were talking back in when you started the job with Trump and you had to leave home for a while, go to New York, January of 2015. Your daughter was only in the 3rd grade, right? Now she's in the 7th. And your other two kids were not even in school. So
no, it's amazing because my youngest one was the same age as my daughter was when I started working for then candidate Trump. And, you just forget how young they are. And now you look back and you say, wow, think of all the things that have changed in the last 4 or 5 years. And, you look back and you're thankful that you had these opportunities, and I am too. And again, you're a little sad that you missed some of the things that were important to them. But I think it helped set the country in a new direction, and one that future generations will be very grateful for.
Well, and now you're going to be watching one of your little guys play football in the fall. So we'll keep everybody updated on that. You got a good little player there. So let's get to the campaign and your timetable. Last week we had you on. The Democrats already running negative ads against you, and you haven't even announced your candidacy or done an exploratory committee. I thought that was odd. Obviously, they're scared to death. You said you'd be making your mind up, you thought, by around September 15th. Does that timetable still hold, Corey?
I think it does, John. Labor Day, I was out talking with people all over the state yesterday, traveling. And look, there is a real desire to have new leadership in Washington, D.C., one that can actually get things done, one that can actually vote with the values of the people of New Hampshire, not with AOC and Chuck Schumer and the Nancy Pelosi wing of the Democratic Party. And, I think what the people of New Hampshire are seeing is having a clear alternative to Jeanne Shaheen is something that they want and that they're looking forward to. And, I bring people back about 5 years ago when Scott Brown entered the race. It was right after he had lost his reelection effort in Massachusetts, moved across the line, and the people of New Hampshire embraced Scott. And he lost that race by a couple points, and he was labeled as a carpetbagger. I know that they want to do that to me, except I live here, my family lives here, my kids go to school here, and there's this notion out there right now, John, by what I'll call the Republican establishment, that they don't want a Washington, D.C. insider to run for the U.S. Senate. I'm not a Washington, D.C. insider. You know what I am, John? I'm a guy who gets up and goes to work every day. I make my home in Wyndham, New Hampshire. I live here. I've been in this state for my entire adult life. And just because my friend's the President of the United States should not disqualify me from being a candidate for office. And so, I caution those establishment Republicans once again from trying to disparage me or attack me because of my relationship with the president.
Look, you're no more a Washington insider than my right shoe is, right? You have gone home to New Hampshire to your family. Corey, my studio is in your office. I know what you do every day. You go home to your family every Thursday and you come back on Monday night or Tuesday. You go to your kids' football games. You go to their events. You're part of the community in Wyndham that you live in. And so to say somehow you're a Washington insider coming back, you simply went to one of your jobs in Washington and came home every single week. I can't remember a weekend you hadn't come home. So
John,
that is asinine.
It's the equivalent, John. It's the equivalent of the governor saying that he lives in Concord, New Hampshire, because that's where he goes to work every day, right? It's the equivalent of saying that these elected officials who previously served, like Kelly Ayotte or Judd Gregg or Bob Smith or John Sununu, were Washington, D.C. people because they went there for work. It's just not the case. And so I just want to put that notion right out of the minds of people. I live here. I'm in this community. Everyone in this community knows me. They know where I get my hair cut, where I have breakfast. And so, they want to try and disparage me because other people who are potential opponents of mine in the race haven't been in New Hampshire for 30 years. And so they want to paint me as someone from outside of D.C., outside of New Hampshire. But the truth is I live here and everybody knows it.
It's an asinine thing for them to say. It's going to blow up in their face. But look, it gets back to what we said earlier. People are scared to death of you because if you get in this race, you're going to be a fighter, you're going to be tough, you're going to support the president, and you're going to win, and you're going to upset their whole machine they have there, which basically has put up a bunch of losers, right? So now's the time for change. What is your thoughts on the James Comey IG fiasco?
I'll tell you, John, I had the opportunity to be on with Judge Janine over the weekend, and she asked me the same question. And she assured me, to the best of her knowledge, with which is not any inside information, that there is something bigger coming on James Comey. I will tell you this. I believe the American people deserve justice. We know that James Comey lied under oath in front of Congress. We call that perjury. We know that he disclosed classified information, regardless if it was at the confidential level, the secret level, the top secret level, or SSI level. It doesn't matter. The fact is he did that, and that's a crime. And if anybody else would have done those things, they would have been charged with a crime. And if you look at the Inspector General's report, and I have enormous respect for Inspector General Horowitz, he said that James Comey was less than truthful. When you're less than truthful, that means you're lying. When you lie to those individuals, that's a crime. And I believe the American people want to see people held accountable, particularly people who perpetrated the largest hoax in the history of America on the American people. Comey went out, and you remember this, John. I happened to be there on that day when he and Clapper and Brennan showed up in Trump Tower. I wrote about this in our first book, Let Trump Be Trump. I'm sorry, in the second book, Trump's Enemies. They told the president, James Comey did one-on-one of the salacious information created in the false dossier, and he said that he had to do that so that the president could be prepared. And then 48 hours later, the Daily Beast and CNN were running this false narrative, and that was the beginning of this entire Russia hoax investigation. James Comey broke protocol after protocol, kept information on his own safe at home that he had provided, that he had written on government computers and said it was his own. He is not above the law. Mm-hmm. And if we don't get some justice, including with James Comey and Andy McCabe, who has been referred to for criminal referral on 3 separate occasions from lying under oath, then the American people deserve better.
I would say so. I've heard the same thing that you've heard from others, that more is coming on Comey, so we're going to have to wait. But, so far, look, Comey put a tweet out. He said, the IG report exonerates me. I thought that was one of the most laughable tweets I've ever seen. It completely skewered him, but somehow in Comey's mind, it exonerated him. Let's get to the president's 2 primary challengers. Joe Walsh, former radio talk show host, which I was the first one to fire in America when he first said that he might do an exploratory committee. You've also got the Harold Stassen of politics, Bill Weld, running. I think last time he ran was as a libertarian. Time before that, I think he ran for town supervisor. What's the deal with these people?
Well, clearly, they don't want to see this president be reelected. And I really call into question why that is. Don't forget, Bill Weld ran as the libertarian vice presidential candidate just 4 years ago, said he would be a libertarian his entire life. Obviously, this is a man who grew up with enormous wealth and enormous privilege and can't get out of the limelight. But when you look at what this president's been able to accomplish, which is the deregulation of the federal government, the appointment of conservative justices and judges throughout the federal bench, right? Helping pass the largest tax cut in our nation's history, renegotiating bad trade deals. What is it from a policy side that these individuals take umbrage that the president has done? The answer is nothing. They don't like the way that he delivers his message, which is directly to the American people, bypassing most of the media that is dishonest. And you know what? That's okay, but they have nothing to run on because this president has governed exactly like he said he would. He has fulfilled the campaign promises that he outlined, and he has done more in the first 3 years than almost any president has done in 8 years. And when we're going to look back on this presidency after the next 6 years are done, the generation after us and the one after that, just like they did with Ronald Reagan, are going to say, thank you, Donald Trump, for standing up for America. And these people have no leg to stand on because they have no policy differences with the president that will amount to anything.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, Donald J. Trump now getting very close to announcing his decision to run for the U.S. Senate from New Hampshire. If he runs, he'll win. That's my prediction. Corey, if you get elected to the U.S. Senate, one of the things that has frustrated President Trump, and he's said this on numerous occasions, is that he is in favor of getting rid of the man-made 60-vote cloture rule in the U.S. Senate so that real legislation can be brought to the Senate and get done, especially if the Republicans are able to recapture the House in 2020. If you're in the U.S. Senate January 2021, is that something that you would be in favor of?
Absolutely, John. Look, these arcane Senate rules, which have been in place for an exceptional amount of time, are designed so that when you're in the minority, the majority does not take advantage. And I understand that. But you have to remember that same rule was in effect as it related to justices. And Mitch McConnell changed that rule to go from 60 votes for a judge to 51 votes, which is what the majority is. And I believe that if the Democrats were to take back the U.S. Senate, and they only need to pick up 4 seats to do that, if they were to do that, they would change that rule immediately to go to a simple majority. And so, look, this rule does not benefit the American people. This is an inside baseball, inside Washington, D.C. beltway, rule that nobody in America understands. And so let's get rid of this notion that you need 60 votes to get any piece of legislation done. And let's actually move some legislation so that the American people can benefit from it. And let's do that with a simple majority.
All right, let's get to the debate now on some restrictions for guns. The president saying he'd like to work with the Democrats in order to get something done. He's in favor of universal background checks. He's also in favor of perhaps extending the red flag laws, so be it that if someone either is trying to purchase a gun or has a gun and they did what the guy did in Dayton did, which is put up a social media list of women that he wanted to rape, people that he wanted to shoot, that somebody could flag that. You represent probably one of the most ardent Second Amendment states in the nation in New Hampshire. How would you reconcile that with what the president has proposed?
John, our state motto here in New Hampshire is called live free or die. Mm-hmm. And that's not just a saying. It's something that is very near and dear to the people of New Hampshire that was first articulated by General John Stark way back in 1809. And part of what that message was we're going to follow the Constitution, and we're not going to allow people to infringe in our rights, which have been given to us by our forefathers. One of those rights is the right to keep and bear arms. Now, we have seen limitations on the right of free speech, and we've seen limitations on the right to keep and bear arms. But what I do believe is this. If you are a lawful gun owner and you have gone through the necessary background checks, you've finished the proper training courses, and you've been issued a right to carry a concealed weapon by your respective law enforcement agency, whether it's a local municipality, whether it's the state police, whatever the licensing authority is, I believe at that point you should have the opportunity to transport your weapons legally across state lines. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing now is that the more gun laws we are creating, they are designed to go strictly after the people who are following the rules. Mm-hmm. Now, we have to make sure we're monitoring people for mental health issues. We have to do a better job of monitoring social media and being alerted when we receive tips, and I say we, I mean the federal government, whether it's the FBI or local law enforcement, about potential problematic incidences. And we've seen this on so many occasions now that unfortunately the police have been alerted to a potential problem and they didn't have the legal authority to step in. But we have to be very careful about creating new laws that are going to impact lawful gun ownership. I'm somebody who's had a license to carry a concealed weapon for almost 30 years. And when you follow the law and you're a law-abiding citizen, that is one of your constitutional rights, in my opinion, the right to keep and bear arms. And so making new law to go after those people who are following the laws in the first place, I don't believe is necessarily the solution. And I'm very, very cautious about red flag laws, John, because what that can be is that can be a vendetta against individuals. That can be someone calling on a neighbor or a colleague or something to be punitive against those people. And then those lawfully purchased legal firearms are removed from that individual's home, and then you've got to go and prove to a judge or a court of jurisdiction that you are competent to keep those weapons. And so I've got some real concerns about overextending and going after lawful gun owners who have followed the laws in the first place.
So what would be your counsel to President Trump, who right now is saying that he's in search of a deal on this?
Look, I think the deal is, look, John, let me give you a couple ideas, and these are just my ideas. And look, I might get some criticism for this. Closing what they commonly call the gun show loophole, okay? About 1/100th of 1% of weapons are purchased through the gun show loophole. What that is individuals who are in the back of a gun show and they're selling privately owned weapons to individuals who are also private individuals. In other words, they don't go through an FFL or a federal firearms license dealer. Most of the weapons that are sold at gun shows are sold between a private citizen and a dealer, no different than if you were to walk into a gun store. It's just that these people have congregated in one location and you have the opportunity to shop in multiple places at once, but you
Right.
go through the same background check.
Right.
Close the gun show loophole. That's a very easy thing to do, right? Also, set the requirements for the right to carry a concealed weapon and to get that weapon at something that's commensurate with people who should have the opportunity to obtain those things. If that means an NRA approved course, if that means something like continuing education credits to prove that you are still competent and capable, things that would be acceptable to rational people are very much in line here. But the Democrats don't want to do any of those things. They want to go and ban what they call assault weapons. And what they do is they scare individuals by saying that this is an assault weapon, it's a military weapon. Look, I've got some real concerns with the language that the media uses because 90-plus or 99% of those weapons are not automatic weapons. In other words, you don't just depress the trigger and the gun fires until it's out of ammunition. You have to depress the trigger once, one round goes through the chamber. And that's how historically all of these weapons work, and those are the vast majority of the weapons that are being purchased legally and lawfully by gun owners.
Okay, let's get to foreign policy. I got a couple more minutes. Wow. Blockbuster book coming out by General Mattis. I saw some excerpts of it last night. Corey, Mattis blasted Joe Biden in the book, saying that he has been a failure in every policy decision he's made for 3 decades. He also heavily criticized his involvement in the complete Iraqi troop withdrawal, which he said was for political reasons, that Biden didn't pay any attention to Mattis, what he was saying. And then obviously Obama firing Mattis right after he won re-election in November of 2012. He fired him in December. So there might be some sour grapes there. But Mattis absolutely skewers Biden on his foreign policy judgment. If Biden's a nominee, I mean, do you think this is going to be an issue in this campaign?
I think it has a real opportunity to be because obviously, General Mattis has now served multiple presidents. I watched him this morning on some of the news shows, and he said when called to duty, he would serve. And so he served both Republicans and Democrat presidents. But the fact that he has come out and viscerally chastised the vice president, the former vice president, for his foreign policy or lack thereof should be a clear indication from someone who's on the front lines and had to implement that policy on a regular basis to say how failed and flawed of a candidate Joe Biden really is. And, the media, John, by and large, will not cover that component of the book. What they want to do, and I saw it today, is they say, well, tell us about your time with Donald Trump. Tell us why you no longer work there. Tell us what the reason was that you and Donald Trump have parted ways. And General Mattis was very gracious, very diplomatic, and he said, look, I'm not going to do that. I want to talk about what's in this book, but that's not what the media wants to talk about. They want to use the opportunity to interview General Mattis to go after the president as opposed to talking about what he actually wrote about in this book, which is the failures of the Obama-Biden administration.
Final question. You mentioned earlier that the establishment GOP in New Hampshire was unhappy with your candidacy, calling you a carpetbagger, calling you a Washington insider. What is their problem with you when, if you're the candidate, if you're the nominee, you're going to bring in all this money, all this attention, and any recent polling that we saw you have absolutely the best advantage or the best opportunity to beat incumbent Democrat Jeanne Shaheen. What's their problem?
Well, John, the problem is that I don't belong to a country club. My father or grandfather didn't have an elected seat before me, and I won't be beholden to those individuals. I'm going to be beholden to the people of New Hampshire, and that scares people. When you have a change agent like Donald Trump who comes in and changes the way that business has been done as usual, that disrupts things. And if you look at the Republican Party in New Hampshire, from where it is today from where it was a decade ago, we had 2 United States senators, both Republicans, and 2 Republican members of Congress, a Republican governor, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican Executive Council. Today, none of those things exist except a Republican governor. So if we think that doing business the way we've always done it is going to work, then we are sorely mistaken. We'll make the same mistakes that the Republican establishment has made for too long. We now have 2 Democrat U.S. senators, 2 Democrat members of Congress, a Democrat legislature both in the House and the Senate, and a Democrat Executive Council. They have decimated the Republican Party in this state. And if they think nominating somebody other than Corey Lewandowski, who is going to go and run things the same way it's always been done, with no money, no name ID, no financial resources to compete with Jeanne Shaheen, is going to be a recipe for success, and they deserve to lose.
Corey, when you are presiding over losing campaign, one would think that if you go down the same path, you end up in the same place, and it's time for change. But there's an old saying, and it's prevalent in Republican politics: keep it small, control it all. And I think that's what you're running into